Hello, welcome to Dundrell's podcast. I'm your host Justin. Today we're reviewing Book 1 of The Last Rune, The Beyond the Pale, which first published in 1998, if I'm not mistaken, by American author Mark Anthony, who's written a lot of Dungeons and Dragons books. He wrote the prequel to the Dragonlance, and he's written like a lot of Forgotten Realms books. This is part one of his fantasy series that has 5 books in them, right? And this is the first one, Beyond the Pale. Uh, this book, I've owned it for a long time, and I read a little bit of it, and immediately I kind of cringed at it, because the book it starts off very Stephen King esque, right? And yeah, it made me kind of cringe, but like after reading some reviews, I decided to check it out, right? And the book is about you have two main characters, Travis and Grace, even though that neither of them on the cover is accurate to how they're described at the book. This looks more like Millennia Night Silver than like Grace Beckett, which the book is. If you're a fan of isekai anime, you'll probably like this book. If people don't know what isekai anime is, basically, there are fantasy stories where characters from our world get teleported to a fantasy world, right? So the book is about Travis and Grace. Travis, while they're being a saloon keeper, like a saloon owner, and Grace Beckett, who was an orphan who became like a doctor working in an emergency department in Denver, Colorado, where both characters live, though Travis is originally from Chicago. One night, weird things happen to both our characters. Um, Travis gets a call from his friend Jack Greystone that he's in trouble, and Jack Greystone turns out to be a wizard from another world called Eldh, which is spelled ELDH. I guess maybe the H is supposed to be silent. I'm not sure, right? Who runs his antique shop? He's being chased by these glowing alien-looking things, which you find out are called rathlings, who are like fairies that have been twisted and corrupted by the Dark Lord of this series, called Belrath, or the Pale King, which that's him on the cover. That's not Elric of Mill and No Bone, Bone. That's the Pale King, who's like the Dark Lord of the book, right? So Jack gives Travis this iron box with a magic stone inside called Cinnathar, which is one of the 3 great runes, right? And is also given a stiletto with a red ruby, which glows when mystical creatures are nearby, right? Especially enemies like the Pale One's minions, right? And he gets teleported to Eldh, right? Thanks to the help of Brother Sai and his apocalyptic revival show, which that character, Brother Sai, very much feels like a Stephen King character, because it's this preacher kind of guy who goes around the country with setting up like preacher tent shows where he kind of preaches. He doesn't preach the gospel, but he preaches the apocalypse coming, right? Which you figure out, oh, he's actually from Eldh, right? The same world as Jack Greystone and this guy, right? So Travis gets teleported to Eldh, where he meets Falcon Blackhand, who is this grim bard, who's called the Grim Bard, right? Who takes Travis with him to meet up with his companions, Belton, who is a knight from Cavalier, and the lady Millennia Night Silver, which I thought that was her on the cover, right? Well, that looks more like Millennia Night Silver than Grace Beckett, which both Travis and Grace are supposed to have blonde hair, by the way. Though, like, Grace has more like platinum blonde, and he has sandy blonde. But yeah, they're supposed to be blonde, both blonde, right? And they're on their way to Cavalier, where the Council of the Kings has been called, and all the kings of Eldh are going to meet to discuss going to war, right? With a mysterious foe, right? On Grace's night where she journeyed to like Eldh, this felt very like an episode of X-Files where she's like working at an emergency department, right? She goes home, meets like one of the people from Brother Size revival show, the child Samantha, gets some weird cryptic messages about the upcoming darkness, and she gets a page, which is page from her beeper, which is very 90s, by the way. This came out in 98, right? And she gets called to come back to work, and there's this guy who killed a woman attacking like a antique shop, right? And he got shot by the police. She operates on him, and he has a heart made of iron, right? He dies on the table, and then like after a while comes back to life, kills one of Grace's friends, right? And shows up. Grace kills a cop. Grace takes the cop's gun and kills the man with the iron heart, right? Then she gets taken to the police, meets a guy. I forget his name, but he's from a group called the Seekers, who investigate paranormal activity around the world. Right, that's where the X-Files feel comes in, and he tells her, hey, these guys with the iron hearts are in our world, looking for runes, right? And she has like a necklace, right? So there's hints that Grace, who's an orphan, by the way, might have came from Eldh, right? So she gets after running away from the police station where she encounters another man with an iron heart, she gets teleported to Eldh, where she's found in like a forest, right? And it's winter in Eldh, right? Where she gets rescued by the Iberian knight Dirge and taken to Cavalier, where she meets like King Boreas and the Baroness Erin, where she becomes friends with them, and she becomes the spy of King Boreas, who has named her the Duchess of Beckett, which her last name is Beckett, and she becomes a spy for Boreas, and is given the job of trying to find out what the agendas are of all the different kings and nobles, right? So, after halfway through the book, our two main characters meet each other, right? And they kind of figure out what their job is and what they're supposed to do in this world, right? So you have like two different magic systems in this world. The men use Rune, where they speak words of power, and then they can like make stuff happen depending on the word of power's element, right? Because you have Kron, which is fire. I don't know what the other two are. Yeah, like you have different like runes where like they have they're like words of power, and they can like do stuff like Kron is like you can light someone on fire. You have like Sinfaf, which is twilight. There's one for Earth, and you have like you can bind runes and break runes, which our character Travis can do, and not all. There aren't any rune speakers in the world that can do stuff that Travis can do, right? And the other magic system is kind of like it's kind of like weaving, right? Where like the witches, like the women, like kind of gather energy from the like life energy from like their surroundings, and they can make stuff happen, right? Which Grace can do, right? So the story is most of the story takes place in the castle, where like our characters are trying to get all the kings and queens to agree to go to war against the Pale King, right? Which Falcon, Blackhand, and his group are trying to muster people up against the Pale King because they were going around the world looking for dangers, right? And there's signs that the Pale King, who's the Dark Lord of the book, is coming, right? But the problem is, you have like almost a Game of Thrones like scenario where magic and magical creatures have been gone so long from the world that nobody really believes in that stuff anymore, right? So it's our job of our main characters to convince them. While that's going on, you have an evil cult called the Raven Cult, who all are servants of the Pale King with iron hearts, who are trying to like sabotage the meeting and assassinate people who are in the way of the Pale King, right? So I really enjoyed this book, though I kind of not a fan of some of the Grace storyline, because it's very much like Pride and Prejudice, and you have like romance and drama and stuff, where I'm more of a fan of the quest style of fantasy adventure, where you get with Travis' story, not so much with Grace, though there are scenes with Grace's story where there is action, right? But I'm more of a fan of the Travis storyline, right? And then if you're not a fan of romance and drama and kings and queens and noble women partying and then gossiping and stuff like that, half the book is that, right? And the other half you have this hodgepodge Stephen King and Lord of the Rings style story going on, right? It meets Game of Thrones, right? So that's that is one thing I like about the book, is that they did a good job of, yes, it's kind of there is Lord of the Rings style storytelling going on, but the book does a good job of staying original, especially since you have the characters from our world being transported into this magic world. Though one problem I did have, the dialogue here and there, even though the book, they're only in the world of Eldh for 2 months, right? Almost right away that they're in the world, in the inner monologues, they're speaking characters from D&D, which kind of bothered me. They don't do that all the time, but it's just that kind of, I would expect that to be like a slow transition, but it happens almost right away, right? Yeah, and then there's the other problem I have with the book where characters will be thinking something, and then like um, other characters will like answer the thing that they're thinking about in their head. Lots of mind reading in the book and no explanation for the mind reading. Right, which that bothered me, right? But other than that, I think the book is enjoyable, and if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, right, and like Stephen King stories, I think you would definitely enjoy this. But for other than that, some people might not like it because it does the characters don't get to like the magic world Eldh until like 100 pages in, and this is like a 620-page book, right? Though there is action like 30 pages in the book, but like yeah, the action is very like it's very spread out, which might bother people. But other than that, I did enjoy the book, and I am thinking of picking up the second book. But if I were to give this a rating, I was thinking 5.5, but it's a solid 6 out of 10. I enjoyed it, but like some people might not, right? So our next review is going to be David Gemmell's Legend, the classic Draenei novel. This was like written by a British author, right, from the 1980 something, right? A lot of people love this book, and we're gonna see if it's well deserved, from my opinion.